We're gonna do a little show and tell today. This is my college degree. Wow, look at that. It says Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Digital Production. Isn't that cool? Isn't that pretty sweet? I've got a bachelor's degree. Probably one of my most frequently asked questions is how I got to be this. Why am I 32 years old and unemployed if I've got a bachelor's degree? Am I stupid for getting a bachelor's degree in art? Are all BFAs useless? Why did everybody get laid off? Is the 3D industry viable? Did 9/11 happen, or was that just clever VFX compositing? Should you be a 3D artist? Am I good at compositing? Am I responsible for 9/11? There are a lot of little events that transpired over the last couple of years that resulted in me being broke and living with my parents again. Some of them are definitely my fault. Some of them are due to pretty predatory practices in the industry at large, and some of them are just because the economy is really, really bad, and I just wanted to talk about that. A lot of you that watch my content are doing so because you've recently enrolled in a VFX production program yourself, or you're thinking about it, or perhaps you're in the same situation as me and you're trying to do an autopsy on what the hell happened here. It's hard to get the full truth out of people who participate in the industry because a lot of them have some pretty bad Stockholm syndrome about it. Even I used to be pretty cagey about admitting how bad things really were. But just like Neo in the Matrix, I've been butt-chugging red pills for a while now, and I'm here to save you from yourself. I'm here to potentially save you from yourself and the lies that these people in the industry will tell you, so you can sacrifice all of your free time and your humanity for something that is no more cinematically complex than the B-movie. When I was a kid, I always really liked drawing. Unfortunately, I was also very, very stupid. I got mostly C's, D's, and F's throughout high school, and I don't even think I graduated with a 3.0. It was probably below that, I'd say. I always hated school. I hated anything that didn't have anything to do with art or band. I ended up getting into a state college, not any of the cool ones, the ones that you go to when you're too stupid for the cool ones, or you just live close by and you don't want to have to deal with dorm life. I was hoping they would have 2D animation, and of course they did not. So I took something that was like tangential to animation, but not really. It was kind of studying film and kind of wasting a lot of time at modern art museums, but you know, it was the best I could get at the time. Going to a 4-year university is a stupid meme, by the way. Your first 2 years are going to be spent doing essentially another 2 years of high school where you have to take general ed only, and you're not going to be able to take anything that actually relates to the thing that you're studying. So you're better off going to a community college instead of wasting a bunch of money at a 4-year. Finally, my first 2 years were up, and I got to take my first art class. I get to class for the first time, and our art teacher is this very leathery man with a low-cut white blouse and a bad toupee, who is handing out pieces of butcher paper and little gummy worms to everybody that walks into the door. This says,
"Okay, everybody, I'm going to dim the lights now, and we're gonna put the gummy worms into our mouths, and then we're all going to sketch how the gummy worms feel wriggling on our tongues."
I dropped out of college the next day. As a Chad Andrew Loomis enjoyer at the time, I could tell with 100% certainty that the longer I spent in that place, the more of my own time I was going to waste. The next 4 years were a blur. I don't know what the fuck I did. I think I got married. I think I was married for a little while. That's a story for another time. A very traumatizing story. I'm divorced now. If you feel like you're up your 20s, it's because you are, but so is everybody else, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's my sagely advice for you youngins out there. I applied to other schools that I thought might have had decent art programs, but I kept getting rejected because my GPA still wasn't good enough. Eventually, in late 2015, my dad comes up to me and says, "Hey, I found you an art school that doesn't care about that time you flunked geometry in high school, or that other time you flunked algebra too." And that's how I ended up at Gnomon. I'm still of the opinion that art school should generally be avoided in this economy, but let's say you must absolutely go to an art school. Like, let's say your parents are just all over your dick about getting that degree, like that piece of shit I threw on the ground earlier in the video, and you really, really want to do 3D art, then just go to Gnomon. The cool thing about Gnomon is that every teacher there is an industry professional, and you can go there to make friends with these people. Why is that important? Because the entertainment industry is one that is built heavily on nepotism. Heavily. Like, do not underestimate that. I'm not saying just go there and be a kiss ass or anything. That's really cringe, and people can always tell when you're doing that. I mean, go actually make friends with people. I met my best friend at Gnomon, and you're listening to his music right now, so you never know when people are just gonna come and clutch for you. If I could go back in time though, instead of taking the full program, I would just take individual courses, because the cost of any art school was kind of crazy. That, combined with living in Los Angeles, was not a great time for my parents' wallet. Also, depending on what you want to do in the industry, some of the classes there just aren't necessary. Like, I had to take 2 rigging classes. I don't remember anything about rigging. I hate rigging, and I've never had to use it a single time in production. Anytime I was asked to do anything related to rigging, I just said, no, I'm not doing that shit, sorry. Cool industry tip: if you don't actually want to do something, all you have to do is be born a decently attractive girl, and then you probably don't have to do it. Other than Gnomon, I would just avoid going to art school entirely, because if you go anywhere else, you're probably going to end up with a degree in advanced McDonald's studies.
もしもし、ドナルドです。
This mainly pertains to 3D though. If you're doing 2D, then I don't really know what the situation is as far as higher education goes. But, you know, 2D doesn't really rely heavily on different types of software the way that 3D does. So you should just get YouTube videos for that. Like, I'm not a 2D illustrator professionally by any means, but I can draw and paint decently enough for the kind of stupid shit I like to post online just to amuse myself. And I was able to do that by just training myself via YouTube tutorials. So you'd be surprised the kind of things that you can find online to bolster your education for free. After years of grinding, of blood, sweat, and tears, in that time a homeless man followed me home with his wiener out because I lived in Los Angeles, I finally got my degree. Up until that point, art school was the hardest I'd ever worked in my life, and it paid off. The stuff I could make was pretty damn cool, and I'd even won an award just for being a tryhard. I wasn't just the village dumbass that struggled with long division anymore. I could use Maya. I was a juggernaut at stuff that I actually enjoyed doing for the first time in my life. So you'd think it'd be smooth sailing from there. All I'd have to do is go apply to jobs and go to interviews in person and in close proximity to other people while shaking their hands and making physical contact in the same room, breathing the same air. My graduation ceremony was in December of 2019, and 2 months later, the entire world fell apart, and I was pretty worried. 2 weeks to stop the spread turned into 2 months, and I wasn't sure what to even do with myself. Suddenly, studios figured out that people were just as competent working from home as they were from an office, and everybody was getting these little coof bucks checks from the government, and people wanted to spend their coof bucks on movies and TV and video games because there was nothing else to do. And just like that, jobs were everywhere, and then my introverted ass didn't have to spend any time in an office pretending like I didn't have weapons-grade Asperger's, and that was really fantastic for me. But that's also the reason why there aren't any jobs now, but we'll talk about that later. Fun fact, I've never worked in person in an office before, and I don't know if this had a negative or a positive impact on my career as a whole, but I just think that if I ever had to spend time working physically in the same geographic location as the people I would eventually end up meeting in the industry, I think I'd have assault charges on my record by now. Doing art as a career for a corporation, for studios, for other people is just so soul-sucking. Trying to turn something that I loved into a commodity is probably the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my life. These studios know that you love what you do, that this is your dream job, and they'll take advantage of that because they know at the end of the day, you'd be doing this shit for free because you love it. Getting paid to do something you already like is a bonus because you'd be doing this anyway. And oh, on top of that, what's this? You get the privilege of working on the IP that you like the most? Whoa! Now you're getting paid in bragging rights, isn't that cool? Now do 6 months of unpaid overtime or you're fired. And it's easy to replace you too, because there's thousands of other bright-eyed and bushy-tailed fanboys out there that would love to slave away for the big IP, for less money, and for longer. Dream jobs are a meme that corporations shill to keep you working a 9-to-5, for the most part. I think if I were a really famous and rich YouTuber and I could afford a plastic surgery to make my eyes less huge and creepy, that would be really cool. Like and subscribe. I found out pretty quickly that doing art for a studio is just a glorified office job in which the paycheck you get is incongruent to the amount of work that you're actually doing. You know, this is just my opinion, of course. I have friends that still love this shit, but for me, I've never really had a pleasant experience in this field outside of making personal work just for me. I have some stories. I'm not going to tell you which studios these occurred at specifically for legal reasons. Some of these places can be unbelievably petty, and I'm not trying to deal with that shit. What I said earlier about 6 months of unpaid overtime, that wasn't an exaggeration. That was a real thing that happened to me. In that 6 months, there was like a 2-month period where I didn't even have a weekend off, and I was just working 7 days a week just to keep up with this crazy delivery schedule that some psychopath pulled out of their ass. And I was making a lot of money, sure, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't even human anymore. I was just a workhorse. I was just a number on a spreadsheet. I didn't even have time to enjoy all the money I was making, and then eventually I would get laid off, and I'd have to get that money to last me for the next 2 years while the layoffs were occurring and gigs were few and far between. And now it's all gone. I always thought when I got a 9-to-5 job, it would be great because I'd have just a bunch of free time in my after hours, but the after hours often never came. And when they did come, I was just too tired to really do much of anything except maybe watch TV. Just a reminder for this little overtime in particular, I was getting paid for my job, but I wasn't getting paid for the overtime. I was just expected to do it or else I'd get canned. Certainly I could have quit at any time, but I have this problem as an artist, and I think a lot of other artists have this problem too. I just don't like quitting. I don't like giving up. And we've all made the mistake of thinking, oh wow, super cool, well-known AP. If I stay there, everybody in my life will respect me more. So anytime I got a gig like this, I would stay like a battered 50s housewife geeked up on barbiturates. So in this industry, contrary to popular belief, you're going to be working with a lot of people who are not artists, and those people are going to be telling you how to do your job. One time I was working at the studio where we more or less did not get to have the final say in any artistic decisions. The investors/publishers did. Usually it's more of a back and forth thing where the artists give the art to the investors and the investors look at it and they're like, oh, I don't know. How many monies will this put in my wallet? And then the artist can more or less convince the investors that things are fine if they make a few small changes. This was not the case at this studio. One day out of the blue, about 8 months into the production, the publishers came in and decided that they hated the entire style of what we were making, and we were told to start over from the ground up. So every character model I'd made up until that point, bang, zoom, to the moon, on. I remember sitting in a Zoom meeting with one of these people as they were examining my character models, which were totally fine like a week prior to that, by the way. And this bitch said,
"Oh, it's not so much the thickness of it so much as it is the curvature."
And I'm like, in my head, what the does that mean? And they couldn't like give us examples of the style that they wanted. And we had issues keeping a concept artist because these people kept coming in and not liking the concept artist. So it was like a revolving door of people who would just get told that their art wasn't what our production was looking for. And it got to the point where we just had people in the studio that could not draw, that were giving concept art to me and telling me to model it. And they were like, "Ooh, what if you did it like this?" And I was like, "Ooh, what if I didn't? If I was your mom, I wouldn't even hang this shit up on my fridge." Now you're probably thinking, hey, you're getting paid regardless. Just put the fries in the bag, little bro. Correct. See, this is a me problem that I have in this industry. I just can't phone it in like that. I do not like submitting work that I think is shitty. I do not like making ugly character models. I want to make stuff that looks cool. Having an emotional attachment to the stuff you make is rough and pretty counterproductive to your work, but it's just something that I personally cannot get over. I just can't do the, oh, just make the slop and get paid sort of thing. I can't. When I make art, I always want to do a good job. It's art. That's what it's for. It should look nice. This is the part where it's kind of sort of also not a me problem, because let's say you're working on something for Studio A and it looks like shit because of like the design or time constraints or whatever. And then that gig ends, and then you're applying for work at Studio B, and then Studio B is like, "Hey, what did you do at Studio A?" And then you have to show them, and it's horse turd from the Pinocchio movie again. God damn it. I'm not an entitled little baby. I'll make the ugly asset at the end of the day. My entire portfolio at this point is full of ugly little assets, but as I'm doing this, I take 1d4 psychic damage every single time. And eventually, when there's no more HP left, I'm burnt out. And that's more or less how my last job ended. I wasn't even fired from that one. It was a miracle I got that job at all, because it was 2024 and all of the layoffs were in full swing. And getting work was extremely competitive at this point. It was an extremely lucky coincidence because I happened to have two friends from two different friend groups at the same studio that happened to both think of me for that role. Again, reiterating the importance of making friends. But the concept for what we were making was really stupid, and I was pulling all of this unpaid overtime again because I had this displacement map error that I'd never encountered before, and apparently neither had anybody else at that office. And this just made the ugly character that I was modeling even uglier because I couldn't fix it. And I was given like AI bullshit again to use for reference for some already pretty bad concept art. And I just thought, why am I even here? What the hell am I doing with my life? I entered this career path because I thought I wanted my 9-to-5 job to be something I actually liked doing, but I hated this. And I'd probably have a more fulfilling and fun experience counting the spokes on my own asshole. I wasn't making the stuff that inspired me. This wasn't Wall-E, it wasn't Coraline. They don't even make stuff like that anymore because Hollywood prefers to play it safe and make slop. And also, there were no other jobs anyway, so I just quit. But why specifically are there no other jobs? There are a lot of things that contributed to the degradation of the animation, games, and VFX industry. Everyone likes to point their finger at DEI, which, while I agree is a stupid policy to implement for both hiring and storytelling.
So, I'm non-binary.
I'd argue that DEI probably had the least to do with all of this. People just really like controversy, and it's the most digestible thing to argue about online for your average aggravated layman. But what's significantly less interesting to talk about and more difficult to get a grasp on, and what's probably the largest contributing factor for why things have gotten this bad, are larger economic problems and predatory corporate practices. Hey, remember earlier when I said I couldn't do long division? I still can't do long division. God didn't give me the cool math autism, he gave me the one where I have a bunch of Undertale shit in my house. Since I'm a big kid now, I'm going to do my best to try and teach you how the economy works and why everybody got laid off because of it. So like, first you have interest rates, which apparently are like fixed nationally or internationally by the government, I guess. Or like maybe everyone gets together and agrees that the interest rate should be like a specific number. Or maybe the president does it. Bill Clinton said the interest rates are basically zero, so you have to do what he says. For a long time, interest rates made it so companies could very easily borrow a bunch of money to invest in whatever project they wanted. And so tech companies did exactly that, running things at a loss with no consequences, therefore setting the grounds for a bubble. And what do bubbles do? They pop. And then someone somewhere sneezed on a bat or like twerked on a petri dish. I don't fucking know. And then the coof was born. Like I said earlier, everybody got stuck at home with a fat check full of coof bucks. And the game industry found this golden opportunity to convert even the normiest of normies into hardcore gamers. Even my mom bought a Nintendo DS, or not a DS, a Switch. Even my mom bought a Switch at some point and started playing Animal Crossing. So game companies start to maximum overhire, as do animation and VFX studios, because this low interest rate, high fever shit affects them too. We've entered this attention retention economy where everybody's trying their hardest to get you to perpetually goon on their app, or play their video game, or watch their movie. Unfortunately, everybody being stuck at home, plus supply chain issues, and then eventually everyone having to go back to work, created some pretty nasty inflation problems. This made Bill Clinton very angry, so he descended from Mount Olympus, where the White House is located, and he punished the people of Earth with high interest rates in retaliation. This means companies can no longer just borrow money arbitrarily. There's real consequences to all of these loans that they have to pay back eventually with the hefty price of added interest. Now, companies have all of this labor that they have to pay for, but not all the free money with which to do so. So now they do what they must because they can. They cull the herd. Companies have this weird fixation with appearing as profitable as possible to investors. So when money is no longer free, the only way they can keep the silly little line on the silly little graph going ever upwards to appease the big scary shareholder wearing the big scary suit but secretly a very poopy diaper is to get rid of people. Getting rid of people makes you look fun and sexy to investors because they don't see it as destroying people's livelihoods. They see it as cleaning house and making things look more efficient, so that funny little number on funny little graph goes up, and if it don't, then I'm gonna get all poopy in my diaper. And CEOs aren't just gonna take pay cuts like they do in Japan to avoid laying people off. That just makes you look weak. Then you can't afford as many yachts. Caring about people in this economy? What are you, stupid? I'm trying to get my dick sucked on a boat. Financially, a lot of these companies are actually doing great, reporting record profits even. They just want to look good for shareholders, so they cut jobs. They're chasing a forever waxing and waning hype cycle, the goal of which is to come out on top with more money than you had previously. And that means removing all of the people that make the art for your product to actually be consumable. These companies do not care about you. They don't care about your art. They don't care about that time you stayed up till 5 a.m. trying to finish a character model. They just don't care. And that's why I can't be bothered to participate in this shit anymore. So what happens now? Where is the industry at large going? What am I gonna do with my life since I'm the main character of this video? Eventually these companies are gonna have to hire artists back. I just don't know when that's going to be, but they can't make a product involving art without an artist, because you can't just generate art out of thin air. Wait. I was actually gonna go on to talk about reasons to hope for a better future, because these companies would eventually remember that, you know, they need to hire people to make this stuff for them. They need to hire artists. And then I remembered that generative AI exists, specifically in reference to a article published by the Animation Guild back in 2023 in reference to AI usage in the industry. So that was already 2 years ago. I'll put a link to that in the description, I guess. Here's some fun little stats for you. 72% of firms surveyed could be considered early adopters of AI. 75% of respondents said Gen AI tools, software, and/or models had supported the elimination, reduction, or consolidation of jobs in their business division. 36 respondents who had or were developing generative AI tools reported that generative AI reduced the need for certain skills, tasks, and responsibilities among staff. Here's my favorite stat among all of these. 47%, and this was in 2023, mind you. So almost half of the responders to this 2 years ago, almost half of business leads said that within the next 3 years, generative AI will be effective at generating 3D assets. I can't help but feel that even if the industry bounces back, I'm going to wind up as a glorified topology janitor. And that's if I'm lucky. Eventually they're going to figure out the topology bits too. Look, I'm not saying abandon all hope. I'm not saying don't pursue 3D modeling or game development or animation. When I was making that Chris Chan 3D sculpting video, I know I kept saying how much I had grown to hate 3D modeling, but as I was sculpting that stupid thing, I just kind of remembered how much I enjoyed it. I think regardless of what happens to the industry, there's always going to be a market for people who want to consume things made by human hands. People want to consume art made by humans because art is unique to the human condition, and whatever a robot spits out is just a soulless copy and completely unrelatable. At least for people like you and me. If a movie comes out that's completely AI generated, I'm not gonna watch it. Same with a video game, I'm not gonna play that. It's entirely possible that these companies will remember their humble beginnings and maybe reconsider the heavy implementation of AI tools to replace human artists. It's not a high hope, but it's a hope. If not, bullying seems to be an effective course of reciprocation. Like there was that one cinematic that Riot did that was entirely AI generated, and people cyberbullied the shit out of them on Twitter so hard that they took it down out of embarrassment. Normalize cyberbullying, companies. Look, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, so I certainly don't know what to tell you to do about it. I'm just here to give you my perspective and to save you from this industry weaving this potentially unattainable, if not very distressing, pipe dream for you. There, of course, is always going indie. All of my favorite games are indie games. My mentor from school and her partner made this really kick-ass indie short film, and now they've got the attention of investors, so much so that they're now going in full ass and creating an entire series by themselves. I'm personally in the process of teaching myself Game Maker. I'm trying to make a silly little shoot-'em-up game, and I'm trying to just make something from start to finish so I can publish it for like, I don't know, for free or maybe for $1, just to say that I made something from start to finish, even if it's not groundbreaking. I'm willing to bet that if just a handful of the talented artists that are probably going to watch this video got together and decided to make something, it could really take off and turn into something real. Now really hit me up if that's something that interests you. I've got some ideas, some rudimentary coding skills, and some decent experience with 2D animation, and obviously the whole 3D modeling thing. Hit me up. We could probably make something. If you want to do art professionally, I'm not going to stop you. Just be aware of the unprecedented changes that are reshaping the market and have a backup plan. I didn't have a backup plan, and now I'm back in my childhood bedroom e-begging and making long-form shitpost content. I legitimately do not have a direction in life right now. I'm kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall until something sticks, so hopefully I don't have to work at a call center for the rest of my life. Hence the YouTube channel. Would be pretty cool if that worked out. Would be pretty cool if just one thing in my life worked out for once. I could continue making artist-centric stuff like this, or branch out into other things. I like complaining. I could make some complaining video essays where I talk about larger societal issues. Microplastics in my balls? How America's central banks are depositing microplastics into your balls right now. I don't know, just a thought. I just want to make things and entertain people. That's why I got into the animation business. So I don't know, let me know in the comments if there's something that you want me to talk about in a video, I guess. I was also just thinking about becoming a bartender, maybe. At least when you screw up making somebody's martini, you don't have to debug the olive.exe software for hours into the night. You just make them another one. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it if you made it to the end. Not that I'm monetized or anything. I just really like it when people listen to me bitch. But like and subscribe so maybe I can get monetized. I love you. Bye-bye. Say it back.